All right, I'm gonna just take you off spotlight for a second here, and let's just do the little intro here. Remove spotlight. All right, Mike D, Angels Over Addiction, Angels Overcast, with the infamous Charlie Mills, in whereabouts unknown. We'll find out about it. So we wanted to talk to Charlie today about manifestation and a few, like, just balling in sobriety. If you look at him right now, he's balling in sobriety. We're going to put him on spotlight, and we're just going to pitch and catch some questions talking about our best selves and what sobriety and, living the coaching way of life, I guess, or, just being the best version of yourself. So let me put you on spotlight for everyone here, Charles. And real quick, so you've been on Angels Overcast before. If somebody wants to get in touch with you right now, how do they reach out to you? Talk to me.
A couple of things for the Angels fan. First off, Mike, thanks for having me on again. It's always great to connect with you and share a little bit of insight and do the pitch and catch with our Angels family. For people that want to get a hold of me, cmillscoaches@gmail. You can just email me directly. That's my business line email address. You can get me there. Start there if you need me. You can also drop a text to my business line at 732-610-7698. Always available for the Angels family.
All right, cool. And I'll put that up there on the retread. I'll get that. I'll get those numbers on the audio, on the video for all of us here. All right.
Cool.
All right. So you want to describe where you're at right now? Let's talk about your last 10 days. Let's hear it.
Yeah, bro. So right now I'm it's about 8:45 in the morning. I woke up about 45 minutes ago. I'm on my second cup of coffee, and the foliage behind me is that's not Central Jersey end of August kind of foliage. I'm down here in one of our favorite spots. We're down on the island of Aruba, down in the Caribbean. This is a place where Diane and I come to recharge every year. We spend about 2 weeks down here every year. It's a must. It's an immovable. And it's just one of those places, bro, where you got to tend to the things that are important to you. And the most important thing to me is my marriage. Besides my relationship with God, it manifests itself through how I behave with my wife and my family first and foremost. And one of the things I do to protect that time, to enhance that time, is to make sure that we do, carve out the time in our crazy lives to just drop away from everything, retreat down here to Aruba, and just not talk too much about business, not talk too much about anything other than what we need as a couple to fill each other's cup.
Cool. So now, like 20 years ago when I met you, when you're rocking a jean jacket and maybe some combat boots and walking in, did you think you'd be spending 2 to 3 weeks a year in Aruba living this life?
Mike, I think the best way to answer that question is I remember hearing a talk on manifesting back in the early 90s, before Google and the internet and everything else, where you actually had to pick up a book or listen to an audio program that you bought on CD. And I remember listening to this program, and it said, oftentimes we feel like we're looking at our lives through a window, and that window is made out of cellophane, like saran wrap, right? And saran wrap, if you stretch it tightly over a frame, you can push. But the analogy was that I felt like I was looking at life through this cellophane window. And even though I wanted what I was seeing on the other side of the window, I could push up against it. I could put both hands on it. I could make a little movement, man, but I could never break through and live in what I saw on the other side of that cellophane window. And it was only through, first and foremost, getting sober, and doing everything that those 12-step rooms suggest that you do. Get a community, get a relationship with a higher power, clear up the wreckage of your past, and start to set new goals for yourself. It wasn't until I did that and started really relying on the universe for the inner strength that I needed to make that break through the window that things started shifting for me. So when you and I met, I was right in the beginning of that process. So I don't think there's anybody in my life, Mike, that has seen that metamorphosis from day one to here we are. I think in another I don't know, month and a half, 2 months, it'll be 21 years since we first met each other in that smelly basement next to the ocean in Belmar, New Jersey.
So like when you talk about the saran wrap, that metaphor, like a common analogy is the glass ceiling. So like that's what's really connected us over the past, I don't know, 8 to 10 years, is like breaking through the glass ceiling. And we often talk about people in not just in recovery, just in life, playing small. So what are some of the tools you have done to break through that glass ceiling at saran wrap?
Wow, great question. Great question. The first is, and I'm always going to go back to this, man, state story strategy, right? We tell ourselves stories, and most people, the story changes continually, right? What do I want? What do I need to get what I want? What might block me from getting what I want? Those are, and there's a million other ways that we can define what a story looks like. But at the end of the day, am I telling myself, and the things that are going through my head, the beliefs that I have, the things that I'm focusing on, are they empowering me or are they disempowering me? Because I have the ability to choose. I didn't understand that when I first got sober. I was running away from the wreckage of my past. And then, at a certain spot, I found myself, you know, with a little bit of time away from my last run. And it was almost like, well, where do I go from here? I've got some stability. I got the trifecta of automotive excellence. My car, my license, registration, and insurance is all in my name at the same address. All my fines are paid for, right? I'm paying my rent. I got a little gig that's making me enough to live on. I can afford a piece of meat, from ShopRite once or twice a week. I'm not living on rice and beans every week. Things are stable, but there the question comes, well, what's next? And that's where, for me, that realization that there was more to life on the other side of that cellophane window or that glass ceiling. But how do I get there? And that's been the 20-year struggle. That's what's the methodology? I need a path. I need a method to do that. I will share a resource with you, Mike, and everyone that's watching this. There's Mel Robbins does a great podcast on Spotify, and my wife actually turned me on. At the end of July this year, on the 31st, she did an episode with a gentleman, Dr. Jim Doty. And Dr. Doty, he's passed, but this was a rehash of one of his final podcasts that he did with Mel. And he talks specifically around the science of manifestation. And it's got to begin. I'm not going to go into this whole thing, but there are definite connections between the physicality of how our brain transmits information and state management to our body and the things that we feed our mind. There's definitely a connection between there. So the first thing about manifesting that I took away from this podcast was that I've got to be able to I've got to say where that ceiling is. I get to choose. And I didn't realize that. That was one of the first things. I get to choose what's the next level of abundance. Am I worthy of that next level of abundance? Am I worthy of the things that are on the other side of that cellophane window? And how do I break through? Well, the first thing I have to do is tell myself a story that I'm worthy of being on the other side of that cellophane window, dude. That's the first trick in manifesting, is opening yourself up and really believing, owning the fact that you are in fact worthy and deserved of what's on the other side of that window. That was a tough thing, because that comes down to identity, right? You and I have talked about this at length, man. State is everything. And when we talk about state, it's what I see in the mirror. It's my identity. My identity as a recovering guy. I'll be 64 years old in 2 weeks, and I'll be 21 years sober in 2 months. I ain't the same guy, dude, that, first shook your hand in that stinky basement, in 2004. We are different human beings, and those different human beings, as different guys, we've had different experiences and we have different beliefs about ourselves. And for me, I realized that I can control what those beliefs are, because they're just constructs in my mind. What do I believe about myself? Am I worthy of the abundance? Do I suffer from a common thing that we talk about in the recovery world? Imposter syndrome. I'm not worthy of that job. I'm not good enough for that job. I can't take that job. I'll fail at that job. Says who? Oh, you mean congratulations, your wish is your command. Control your mind, and you begin to take control of your experience in the world. And that's the genesis for me. That's the beginning step in understanding how manifestation works. That podcast is, I can't talk any better around how to create the life that you want, how to manifest. than Dr. Godey does with Mel Robbins. Everyone should listen to that podcast.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'll put a link on here. And then also, so I know you well in manifestation. So 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you did a Spartan race. Talk to me about that. You mentioned your age. You're over 60. You do your first Spartan race. What's that feel like?
Part of that where do I want to be? What do I want my life to look like? I don't want to be, I look around and I see guys my own age, and I see guys like starting to have hip replacements and knee replacements, and they're sharing their struggles with arthritis and lack of movement and lack of libido and all these things. And I just said, I don't want to go out like that, man. I want to go. There's that meme that goes around from time to time on Instagram that says, "Man, I don't want to go, slipping into the grave, man. I want to go sliding head first with my knees scraped, my hands raw from, doing the Pete Rose dive for third. That's how I want to end my life. That's I want to go out in a blaze of glory, as Sid Vicious said. And for me, that just means taking care of my body. So when it came to when it came to challenging myself, I got a coach, and I said, dude, what do I do? I was out of shape. My libido was low. My physical presence, I wasn't happy with. So I got a coach because I don't know what I don't know. And that first thing that he did was he did a nutritional reset, and I retrained my body how to absorb nutrition. All of a sudden, I started shredding weight, and now I'm feeling alive. I'm feeling energetic. I'm not carrying around 40 extra pounds at 58 years old, 59 years old, man. Simply by addressing what I'm taking into my body, from a nutritional point of view. And that got me thinking, what's next? What else can I do? Well, let's get into shape. It's not necessarily about aesthetics for me. It's about functionality now at my age. We get older and we hear stories of, well, how your parents doing? Your parents are in their mid 70s. What's happening? Oh, mom took a fall. And then there's the gradual decline. And it always begins, for me, it seems like it always begins with a slip. So the Spartan piece for me was the carrot in front of the donkey. I needed a goal, and I wanted to be able to complete a Spartan in my 60s. First time I've ever done anything like that. And really what it did was it got me into the gym. It got me exercising on the regular. And my physical health is everything. Without the energy, the vitality, then I've got nothing. Everything that we talk about doing in this world, my ability to serve the God of my understanding is mitigated if I'm physically unable to or energetically unable to. So the Spartan race was a pretty big thing for me. Got two other guys in recovery, one guy that was in his early 40s and one guy that was in his mid 30s that was jacked, and he was doing push-ups in between events like a crazy man. And but I got through a 3.5 mile Spartan with 20 some obstacles. No injuries, and we got through it, and it was pretty freaking cool.
And as you're shredding that weight, and you talked about the vitality coming back, what about your cognition? Because that in part of our program, we talk about nutrition, and it's not just losing the inches on the stomach. It's about having a better frame of mind, and then just operating at a higher capacity. So what would you talk about with that?
Yeah, great question, Mike, because it all begins in your mind, man. Great segue. Body, mind, and spirit. My body has to be, I have to take care of my body. It's everything. My energy, my vitality, my cognition, everything, is under my control. A lot of people don't realize that. They fall into the victim piece, but I don't believe that at all. When it came to my cognitive state, I've always been pretty alert. I really don't get too much brain fog, but the more I take care of and guide my mind, some simple practices, then I find that I'm that much more effective, that much more connected. What's the process? Well, the process is my rituals. My morning rituals address all three buckets: body, mind, and spirit. And with regards to cognition, I try to learn something. I spend 20 minutes a day reading a book and highlighting, even if just glancing over something really quick. But I spend 20 minutes every morning reading a book. I spend 20 minutes every single morning reading some spiritual literature and then meditating on that literature and journaling. if anyone is asking Charlie if there was one thing I could do to turn my life around and start to take control of my life, take control of my mind, take control of my health, I would certainly say the first thing you need to do is go out and get yourself a good pen and get yourself a journal and start writing. Start documenting your journey. It's the story of your life. I've been journaling since the early 80s, and I can look back at some of those journals and see periods in my life where, my mind was all over the place, and not coincidentally, my finances were a mess, my spirituality was a mess, my addictive life from time to time reflected what was going down on those pages. But now, as I step into this fourth quarter of life, let's call it, and I'm going into this fourth quarter with energy, vitality, with a sense of abundance, with a sense of I am worthy and deserving of more, and there is more. There's more to do. There's more service to give. There's more abundance to create. There's more trips to Aruba to have. But it begins with that taking care of your mind and making sure, for me, making sure that I'm staying connected to those beliefs that support the things that I want to achieve. Get a journal.
I love it. Yeah, neuroplasticity, and I heard a phrase, neurogenesis, where your mind, you're actually creating more capacity for your brain by writing out and thinking, and your neurons that wire together, fire together, like Joe Dispenza talk about. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, man.
Great answer. And then also it got me thinking. So I know you well. So you've had a few different career paths, completely unrelated, but the standard and the excellence of all of them. So now, what's it look like recreating your life? Like, I know you've done a few times in sobriety, and then let's just say hypothetically, a guy's in recovery and maybe he works at a union, and he's a tradesman at a union, and he's not, firing on mind, body, and spirit at all capacity. What would you say to the guy that is doing a blue collar job at a high level or wants to get to a higher level? What's the mindset? What can they manifest? What would you say there?
First thing I would say was get a coach. Get a coach to help you. It's the easiest way, man. If it's one thing that I've always surrounded myself with, it's guys like you that pick my curiosity, that I hold in higher regard, that are ahead of me on the journey. And I'm not talking about a timeline. I'm just saying, in achieving something. I like the thought that I always want to be the dumbest guy in the room, right? Because that means I've got it's like being in a library. I've got resources around me that are going to teach me things. So for someone looking to get to the next level, first thing, bring in a trusted advisor, get a coach, get someone that's going to question you, challenge you, hold you accountable. That would be the first thing. Second thing would be, some basic, identity skills. Who are you? And more to the point, who do you need to be to get to these results that you want to get to? If you're a trade guy but you really enjoy cars, you pick up Car and Driver and Motor Trend, and you're always surfing around and reading Popular Mechanics and doing all those things, and you have this thought maybe of getting out of the trades and being a sales guy at a car dealership. Well, the first thing I would suggest would be, create an identity. Who do you need to be that sales guy? What skills do you need to have? What do you need to see in the mirror to be able to make that transition? And then the second piece would be to set some results. How do you know you're being successful? What do you have to do? What's the first thing you think you have to do to go and chase that success in that new career? What do you have to believe about yourself that's going to hedge the bet? One of the greatest things when it comes to starting a new process, Mike, one of the biggest phrases that I've ever heard, I share it with all my clients, I probably say it 10 times a day when I'm on coaching days. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the uncertainty that you can embrace and endure. I'll say it again. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty or uncomfortability that you can endure. What does that mean? Well, if you're a blue collar guy, if you're a bricklayer in the union and you're like, screw this, I don't want to keep breaking my butt in the hot August sun. I want to work. I want to wear a suit. I want to sell cars. I love cars. I've been into cars since I had my first Matchbox car when I was 5, and I'm passionate about it. I know everything about it. I want to be a car salesman. Well, first thing you need to do is embracing uncertainty that transition is absolutely going to bring to the table. You need to be able to see a car salesman in the mirror before you even apply for the job. It's that inner work that has to happen. It's that manifestation work that has to happen. It's that identity shift that has to take place. And here's the cool thing: if you're watching this podcast and you're in the addictive world, if you're in recovery, you've already started doing this stuff. The single hardest transition I ever made in my life was going from that skell junkie and drunk that couldn't keep the stash away and the bottle away, that had to every 72 hours get high to escape the pain of living in my own mind, my own untrained mind, and my empty heart. The first thing I had to do was embracing uncertainty, to walking into a room and saying, "Hey, my name is Charlie, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I can't stop, and I need help." That was the hardest thing I ever had to do, and to sustain that to day after day after day after day after day in that smelly basement in Belmar, New Jersey. Going to that meeting, man, and going through that change. Most people in recovery don't understand, because they're living in it. They don't take a step back and say, look at the path that I just walked. Look at the transition that I just went through, the change, the pain, the angst. How do I figure out how to get my license back? How do I deal with the wreckage of my past? How? Well, it's not how, it's who. Who do you need to be to transition? So the first thing has to be for that guy looking to break through that window. It all comes back to the same thing, whether it's trying to get sober, whether it's trying to elevate to the next job, whether it's wanting to get on one knee and ask the girl for her hand and to spend the rest of her life with you. No matter what the goal is, it's got to start. Your impact in chasing and achieving that goal starts with what you see in the mirror. What do you believe about yourself and your ability to get that brass ring, no matter what it is, whether it's the girl, the car job, the sales job, the let's go to Aruba twice a year for 2 weeks, and work from Aruba. That's the next goal. Figure that out, come here. But it's got to start with what we see in the mirror, Mike.
Yeah. And so that analogy with the guy that's working in the union tradesman, and then even in recovery. So we have a belief system, and a good acronym is that it's BS. The short breaking it, it's kind of bullshit. The belief system is that, okay, so me, I have bipolar disorder as a label on my mental health jacket. And now if I live to that label, I'm not doing this right now. I'm not connected to you. I'm not living in Florida. I'm not putting myself out there. I'm not trying, or I'm not changing the paradigm of mental health and addiction like we're doing, because I'm in that belief system. No, dude, you're going to have a manic episode if you do this. So what were some of the ways you broke through the bullshit belief systems that were imprinted on you?
Well, great question. Well, great question, Mike. Great question. The first answer is the realization that I choose what's true and what's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I choose. The reality that we live in only has the meaning that I give it. Same thing with you, same thing with anyone that's watching this. Am I a success? Well, how are we defining success? Is it abundance in money? Is it square footage of my house? Is it number of houses? Is it zeros and commas in the bank? Is it horses under the hood? I mean, how are we measuring success? So the first thing we need to do is realize that we're capable of achieving more. That's the very first thing. The next thing is making sure that you understand that you get to choose where the bar needs to be set. Where do I want to go? And again, who do I need to be to get to that bar, to push that bar up and get over that bar? Does that make sense, Mike?
Yes, it does. Yes. And so, for those that don't know, Charlie is a master coach. Some people don't even know what life coaching is or coaching is. What would be the Reader's Digest for the simple definition of how would you define what coaching is? And then we'll dive in deeper from there.
Yeah, coaching to me is nothing but a ride or die. You know, uh, a coach is someone that's going to, without judgment, look to help you to improve your life in the way that you define improving your life. It's the easiest way to describe it is the sports metaphor. You know, if you look at an NFL quarterback, it's never just the NFL quarterback on that field. If you look on the sidelines and up in the booth, you know, the support people that one player, that one quarterback has is crazy. There's a head coach, there's a position coach, there's an O coordinator, you know, there's a strength coach, there's a mindset coach, there's an acupuncturist, there's a nutrition coach, there's a strength coach, there's an agility. I mean, there's probably 20 people, financial advisor, marriage counselor. You know, there's a million people on the metaphorical sideline of any NFL player, right? Think of yourself as an NFL player, you know, and what support system do you need around you? A coach stands on the sidelines and see things in a player that perhaps that player can't necessarily see in the moment because he's busy trying to execute on the field. But when that player trots over to the sideline and sits with the coach, the question is, all right, coach, what do you see? What can I do differently? You know, this is what I experienced. This is the challenges that I'm having. What do you see? You know, it's that pitch and catch. It's that, like I said, ride or die. It's that pilot, co-pilot. It's that passenger and driver. You know, however you want to look at, you know, paint the picture. Coaching is all about, you know, helping you to understand who you are, and then from based on who you are or who you need to be, what is it that you want? What might what do you need to get what you want, and what might block you? And then we just start to go down the road together.
Right.
Uh, it's not unlike, you know, in the 12-step world, it's not unlike sponsorship. Uh, it's not necessarily therapy. You know, therapy is insurance driven, it's strict, there's a lot of rules around therapy. Therapy spends most of its time reframing the past. Coaching, cognizant of the past. Coaching is all about, well, where are we going? The analogy is always, you know, my client as a coach, I'm in the passenger seat. My client is in the driver's seat. If I was a therapist, when my client would have a challenge, we would pull over to the side of the road. We would get out of the car, turn the car off, get out of the car, sit on the trunk, and look down the road that we just traveled and start making sense of it. That's therapy. Coaching, on the other hand, same scenario, driving down the road. I'm in the passenger seat as a coach. My client's driving, but my client, when they have a challenge, we're focused on where we're going. And if we need to talk about some of the impactful events and scenarios that we lived through in the rear view mirror, we don't pull over and talk about it. We keep moving forward. That's coaching. Coaching is all about what's next, cognizant of what we went through. That's why I say, you know, the hardest thing that we've ever done is that first 6 months, year of getting clean and dealing with all the challenges that life is throwing at us while we're trying to rebuild the airplane at 30,000, or swap out the engine of our life at 30,000 feet without the, you know, landing the plane, right? That's kind of getting sober. Life didn't stop, man. We got to figure this shit out as we're going forward. Uh, that's why having a sponsor and a supportive environment is important. And when it comes to goal setting, having a coach is essential. It's the easier, softer way. Yeah, it costs a couple of bucks, but you're investing in yourself. You're hedging the bet. You're compressing the timeline. Your coach is seeing things that you don't see. You know, is pointing out experiences that you've already lived through. The recovery experience, the first 6 months being a key piece. Everyone that I've ever coached in recovery, Mike, I've always brought up like, dude, what do you mean you can't ask the girl out? You got through the first 6 months of addiction with nothing. You had 2 pairs of sweatpants and a couple of grungy t-shirts, and you were living in a halfway house with no job and no phone. And now look at you. You know, you're paying your bills, you're paying your fines down. You got rid of those sweatpants with the cigarette holes in them, and you know, you're looking like a respectable human being again. You're starting to create some momentum. What makes you think that girl would say no? Look what you've been through. Look at the uncertainty that you went through in the first 6 months of recovery. You embraced that uncertainty and you achieved it. It might have been uncomfortable, but look where you are. Your finances are stable. You got your license, registration, and insurance card all under your name and all at the same address. right? You weren't running away from your fines. You called your PO. You set up those scheduled payments on your child support or your fines or whatever. I mean, you went through it. What makes you think you can't continue to move through those challenging things and achieve those things that you're looking to get to, that are going to make you think that you're living a fulfilled life? That's the essence of manifestation, man, is again, understanding where you've been, how you've changed, and who you are today based on those changes, because you're in
Nice.
control.
Nice. I'm going to take you off Spotlight just because it pixelates a little bit. I just want to do the last half off of Spotlight here,
Sure.
if my mouse will work here. And then I'll go to the next question when I have you off there. Hold on a second.
Pesky mouse, pesky mice.
Pesky mouse. All right, there we go. All right. So now, as you were talking, the last answer, I was thinking, like, what I've learned in coaching is it's only as good as the coach, as a client or the team member. We'll call them Neos in our program, like, because we want them to break the matrix of addiction and recovery. If Neo doesn't take whatever the red pill, none of that happens. So they take action. So what's like the key when you're coaching somebody? Like, you can't make them take action, but what is like a tool for somebody that's like sitting on the sidelines, like, damn, man, Charlie's living life, dude. He's in Aruba, beautiful wife, beautiful life. I want to get there. What do I got to do?
Great question, Mike. Great question. And again, it's always going to come back to the first thing is take control of your mind. One of the greatest tools I ever found, and I use it a lot with my clients. I found the tool through the Robbins world when back in the mid 90s, again, before the internet. I bought this tape program, a CD program called Personal Power by Tony Robbins. And one of the tools or the workshops that he takes you through in this 30-day course is a thing called the Dickens process. Now, if you remember A Christmas Carol, three ghosts visit Scrooge: the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. And it scares the hell out of him to taking action and seeing the error of his ways. And, everybody lives happily ever after, and somebody gets raspberry dressing on their turkey. That process, when as a coach, first off, as a client, realizing that if I don't stop abusing drugs and alcohol, what has my life been like? That's the ghost of Christmas past for me. And I write down, what was I feeling? Who was I hurting? What did I see in the mirror? What was the level of self-loathing? How was it impacting the results that I was looking to achieve? The ghost of Christmas present, right? And this is a second step with my eyes closed. And I'm thinking, if I don't change, how is it going to impact life today and in the immediate future, the next month, the next 6 months? What's life going to look like? How is my, at the time, wife? How is her life going to be impacted? How is my extended family going to be impacted? And then you shift over to the thought of what's going to happen if I don't change. What's life going to look like a year from now? The ghost of Christmas future. It's basically connecting me to the patterns that I've lived on that didn't serve me, the patterns that I'm currently living in that aren't serving me. And then if I don't change, how is life going to be different a year from now? Not just me, but connecting the pain and the lack of forward momentum to the impact it's going to have on others. And by the end of that process, Mike, and it was about a 30-minute process. When I personally did it, it was on CD with headphones and a notebook, and I got my eyes closed. And part of the exercise had you looking into a mirror and really reflecting as Tony is talking you through these questions, reflecting in a mirror and looking at yourself in the eyes. And I'm like, by the ghost of Christmas present, man, I'm crying my eyes out, realizing that if I don't change, holy shit, my life has been a mess, a disaster. And if I don't change, I'm going to drag a lot of people down with me. And that one tool helped me to realize that if I don't make a shift, my life, I can't do the same thing over and over and expect different results. I had to embrace the uncertainty of taking some different action, some things I had never done before. Going through a fourth step, getting sober and going through a fourth step. I've been around recovery by that time, for 30 years. I had never done a really searching and fearless inventory, and more to the point, shared it with somebody. So by going through the Dickens process and really seeing what had happened, what was going on currently, and if I didn't change, what life was going to look like, wasn't a good picture. It was going through that process that spurred me to take different action. And that was picking up the phone and saying, I'm getting high for a little while, I need help.
It's such a synchronicity that you mentioned this, because like this logo wouldn't be here if it were not for the Dickens process. Like you and I would be friends, we would be talking, but we would not be talking in this capacity. So as an event, they did the Dickens process and the Ghost of Christmas Future. Like I love my nephew and nieces more than life itself. Like I love them. And I'm like, what if I'm too much of an imposter, fugazi? There's a few other words I want to say. I'm not going to say it. To not help people. What if they have addiction and mental health, but there's no program out there because Uncle Mike was too much of a sucker to put himself out there? Like what happened? Like the kid that's in like Rosa Pavilion, the psych ward right now. Like what happens to him right now if the program's not out there? Like coaching's not out there. Like for me, like when you're mentioning, like yeah, it costs a few dollars for a coach. What does it cost you not to have a coach? And
Great question.
I'm not downplaying. Like I'm still on the Abilify, still see a psychiatrist, psychologist, all that stuff. But the coaching, being a client of coaches, has taken my life so much, like broken all those belief systems, and I still pay homage to the existing paradigm. But like this is what it's about, is like what it costs not to, like. So what does it cost you not to get a coach, man?
Pain, suffering, misery, that feeling of being stuck, that accepting the fact that I'll never be able to push through that cellophane window. I will never be able to experience the fulfillment, joy, peace, curiosity, love, connection, abundance that's on the other side of that window. Accepting that, well, this is just me and I'm going to have to trudge the road, and not in a good way. That's what happens when we accept the status quo. And the sad thing is, Michael, that so many people accept the status quo. The reason that you and I are together at Angels is that we don't accept the status quo. Yes, we understand that the mental health and addiction, universe, the ecosystems, the businesses of mental health treatment and addiction treatment are what they are. They are insurance driven, and that's it. There has been no change in either of those business, nothing radical in 70 years. We talk about this a lot. So what we're doing is not accepting. If you want different results, you got to take different action. You and I are advocacy in action. We are pushing the envelope. We are creating different structures, different ways for people to break through. The Dickens process, identifying, who am I currently, but who do I need to be in 30 days when I walk out of this treatment facility? Who do I want to be in 45 days when I walk out of this treatment facility, whether it's substance abuse or mental health? Like no one addresses that because no one brought that to the table. And that to me, as a coach, as someone that's been in the change business, I've done 14,000 calls in my career. In the last 7 years, 14,000 calls. That's a lot of calls every year, man. That's a lot of change. And there are some certain patterns out of those 14,000 calls. I've watched people change. There are certain things that are constant in all of them. The first is that statement, you got to embrace the uncertainty. If you want to get different results, you got to take some different actions. And that means embracing uncertainty. If you want to get to different results, who do you need to be to get to those different results? Identity work. No therapist that I've ever had, no colleague in a treatment facility that I've ever talked to has ever spoken about identity work. They talk about how to get sober. Don't drink, go to meetings, get a sponsor, write an inventory, take care of your food intake, pray, meditate, all this stuff, the hows. The how is the least of it. Everyone's got a method of how. It's not how, it's who first. Who do you need to be? And no therapist I've ever spoken to, even though they're educated, as a coach, our entire methodology comes down to one guy, Maslow. Maslow created human need psychology, and that is the easiest, simplest way to save lives, is to start using Maslow and human need psychology as a coach. That's my single biggest tool. It's my, it's my Mike Tyson right hook to the jaw. It's guaranteed to get me a KO in under 2 minutes in the first round.
Mhm.
Using mass style, bro. It's identity work. And when you change what I see in the mirror, then the possibilities of breaking through that cellophane window come into play, because I'm looking at a different guy. I'm looking at the guy who's capable of breaking through. The how to break through is completely arbitrary. You're going to figure that out. When the what is defined and the why, when I define what I want and I really connect at a heart-centered level to why I want it, the how is going to work its way out. Because I have to keep reminding myself, hey, it's my nieces and nephews. I love them more than my own life. I love them more than life itself. I'm not going to phone it in. Not going to be a mook. I'm going to be a pillar of strength, support, love, curiosity for my nieces and nephews, because I love them. They're my legacy. When you connect at that level, day after day after day after day, you're unstoppable. And that goes for anybody watching this. It's never about how to get to something. It's about why I want to get to something. Because in that why is the resilience, it's the dedication, it's the curiosity, it's the ability to embrace the uncertainty that's going to come up when the how starts getting put into play, right? But if I'm connected at the heart to why I want this, I become unstoppable. And again, something that perhaps, a listener or two that's watching this has never really thought about. It's the benefit of having a coach.
Yeah, 100%. Because the coach will ask you the questions. Well, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why? And then you're like, holy shit, this is why I wake up in the morning. It's not for
Yeah.
the paycheck. Hypothetically, it's for my children to be in a good school system. That's why I'm working 7 jobs or whatever it is. Like I have a friend, she was a single mother for a very long time. Now she's engaged to a great guy. She just bawled doing anything and everything to get her daughter the best possible life. And yeah, that's her why. That's her why. Her why. Yeah.
And Mike, most people have a why. They just don't recognize it, and they don't use that why that they instinctively have. They don't use it to, in other areas of their life. My dad would get up in the morning. He would get up early to go to work. He worked the same job. He was a manager at a manufacturing company here in central New Jersey. But that was the only place he ever brought his strength, knowledge, passion, because he loved his guys. He loved what he did. But when it came to the emotional landscape of raising boys, my brother and I, or connecting with my mom, I think that he didn't necessarily utilize that power of why in a way to overcome some of the challenges. That's when fear crept in and kept him living a very small life, rather than leading this big, curious, connected, expansive, engaging, always learning life that he had at work. It didn't translate into other areas of his life. And it made it, as a guy that I'm right around the age that my dad passed away at 25 years ago, and it makes me sad. My dad had a coach. Maybe he would have been able to see some of the opportunities that were right under his nose. And that goes for most of us, Mike. The people that I coach, and you probably experience the same thing. They play a small game because they're constantly focusing on, well, how am I going to do that? How about you don't worry about how? How about you worry about who? How about you say Geronimo and trust the process and just go? Because what's the worst that's going to happen? Shoot ain't going to open. You got a reserve shoot. Hopefully you got a reserve shoot.
All right. Last question. You're in paradise here. I don't want to take you all your time on vacation here. So it's somewhat similar. We have this conversation a lot. So what we tell ourselves. So what I've noticed in recovery is people get put in a matrix a little bit, and they're like, there's a line and somewhere around the 3rd step in literature where it talks about selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our problem. And then every night they're on an app or they're calling a mentor of theirs, telling them how they're selfish and self-centered. And all day they're just looking where they're selfish and self-centered, and they're manifesting selfishness and self-centeredness in their life. From my view, like my experience is I look for where I could be altruistic. Instead of being dishonest, I look for opportunities to be honest. Instead of fearful, I look for opportunities to be faithful. And this is like part of my transformation and recovery as a coach. as a client and coach. So what would you say somebody, a little bit of time, they know 164 pages in and out. They're not doing all the other work like the book suggests, you know, get your reading work from minister, rabbi, or somebody in recovery that knows their thing.
Right.
How do we break the matrix in recovery where so many people are just playing small and they're over mechanic on 164 pages?
Dude, it's, yeah, you know, again, the 164 for a lot of guys that I've sponsored, the 164 is gospel. They fall victim to, you know, the word rather than the spirit that the word was written in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first thing. And a great example is, you know, I do my nightly inventory. Where was I selfish, self-centered, self-seeking? If you look for those things, you're going to find those things. And when I constantly, night after night after night after night after night, write a personal daily inventory and look for those negative things, I'm going to find those negative things. And when I find those negative things, it subliminally tells me I'm still selfish, I'm still self-centered, I'm still self-seeking, I'm still scared, I'm still dishonest. Day after day, I guess I'm not changing. But that's the human condition. When I work with my sponsees, I say, listen, you've done in the literature, you've done 3, you got a great connection with somebody bigger than you. You're now living through the lens of contribution. God, what do you want me to do to make the world a better place? Because I know you got my back. I know you're going to take care of me. I know I'm going to get mine. What do you want me to do for you? This isn't horse trading, God. I'm here for you. Tell me what to do. And I trust that I'm going to have everything that I need to live an amazing life. That's 3. In 4, I write down, what did I do? What are some of the examples of my psychology? Because when I get to that 5th column in an inventory, that's where I get to selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, scared, dishonest, over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's who I was. That's my old identity. But now with my sponsees, I say, who do you need to be? Who do you want to be? Because you get to choose. So how do I bring that into day-to-day practice to create the change in my sponsees and my clients? Same process. For every one thing that you identify that you could have done differently, not wrong, not bad, not mistake, what's one thing that in doing your nightly review, give me 2 things that were awesome about today. 2 things that surprised even you upon reflection. 2 things that you did to make the world a better place. I don't care if it's something as simple as opening the door to Starbucks for a lady that had her pocketbook and her cell phone and she was running late for a meeting, obviously. So you just held the door for her. I don't care if it's, you know, just being patient when, you know, a woman in front of you at ShopRite after work, after you both had a long day and she's got this kid that's sitting in the basket and crazy and screaming and fussing and just uncomfortable. But you sat there and you made stupid faces at the kid and calmed the kid down and made him laugh. Are you identifying those moments in your life? Because the next question that you need to ask yourself on your nightly review, after you've written down 2 or 3 things that were cool about today, 2 or 3 things that made you feel like you contributed to the stream of life, you left something on the table of life, what's one thing that you can identify that you could do differently? Yeah, maybe I can be accountable that I came back 10 minutes late from lunch from my boss rather than making up an excuse. That was me being a little dishonest. I could have just been accountable right there. I could do that differently tomorrow. See, you didn't do anything wrong because I get to choose how I frame that. It's something that it's an area that I could work on. I could do differently and I would feel better being accountable. Right. And then always end with one thing that's great. What's one last thing that you did today that was really great? See, that's how I guide my sponsees and my clients into doing a nightly review or a morning review. Right? You have to focus on the good stuff because the bad stuff is always available to us. And if I'm constantly focusing on what's bad, what's wrong, what's not going the way I want it to, then I'm going to start to feel disempowered. I'm going to start to feel a sense of negativity that's not going to get me to that next spot, Mike. You know, so, you know, where focus goes, energy flows. I feel what I focus on. If I constantly, night after night after night, say, oh, I lied, or I stole, or I wasn't honest, or I embroidered the truth, or however we want to frame it, right? When we say these things, dude, we continually keep ourselves trapped in that old identity. But when we start to focus, shift our focus to things that we're doing, the small little things that are making the world a better place, we start to see a different version of ourselves. Growth doesn't happen in explosions. Growth happens step by step by step. And when I mindfully take those steps, I turn into a different version of myself. Does that make sense?
Yes, and then what really jumped out at me too is earlier when in the beginning when we talked about mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
So mentally, if I'm telling myself positive frames on what I did during the day, then my spirit's going to be clear to sleep better or wake better, and my body is going to be more operational. It's all interrelated, man. It's like I'm negative, you have negative. All right, sleep in the negative mind. That's going to be fun. And then your day's gonna be shot because you didn't sleep good. You gotta call your sponsor. Oh my god, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, dude. I mean, we could do another 7 hours on this if you want, but that's where I see in recovery, man. We're like minions, bro. We're like minions. I'm self-centered. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, you can't, and that's the sad part about guys that I know that, and we both know, and it always seems that 5 to 7 year mark because I went through it.
Yeah.
Because I knew the literature, because I could stand in front of a meeting and speak with passion and experience to the way that I walk through the literature, both negatively and transformationally. I get caught up in the literature. I get caught up in the word, not the spirit of the word.
Yeah.
And that is a bear trap. That keeps me trapped. That's why I love the sponsor that I've got now, because we just walk side by side and we talk about these things. It's not boss horse. I never put him in a superior posture over me, even though he's my sponsor. He's been doing it 20 years longer than I have. Of course, I'm going to go to him with my challenges. And he's a good guy. He talks about God a lot. He's playful. He's funny, but he's intelligent. He doesn't tell me what to do. Sure, he puts up some guidelines like the 72-hour rule. Got to call him every 72 hours, man. No more than 3 days go by without me connecting with my sponsor. Got to do dinner once a quarter. Got to have some time together. Got to see him at least once a week at a meeting, or twice, 3 times a month at least, and those are guidelines that we both adhere to. Sure, there's a little bit of play in between. We both have pretty active lives, but at the end of the day, it's the spirit of connection between sponsor and sponsee that really is empowering. I'm a good sponsee. He's a great sponsor because I say so, because he says so, and it's the difference between other sponsors that I've had that really use rules, the book is gospel, and that's disempowering, man.
It's dangerous, dude. It's dangerous.
It's
what I
dangerous.
see is, yeah, people treat it like it's words inspired by God, but it's not God's word. And it gets revered like God's word, and that's idolatry. And that's scary. You know what I'm saying? Because like the other metaphor is it's a treasure map. It's not the treasure.
Yeah, man.
So that relationship with God, those mechanics are pointing you to God. It's like, my boy does it but God, you're going to God the whole time. So your sponsor, for me, he was pointing me to God the whole time. And then like, oh, wow, this is peace. This is a new freedom, a new happiness. And I wasn't as reliant upon him because I had this new relationship with God, and it was just flowing. And I hear it all the time because guys, they got a few circuit speaker spits down, and they're speaking with passion. And they got, whatever 2 years to identify themselves as recovered. I'm not spitting on that either, but I'm saying suddenly you're not looking at God, you're looking at the literature, and that's that 164, that last chapter, A Vision for You, is very transcendental, bro. It's way more than 103, bro. Those last few chapters are deep.
Yeah, no doubt. It's and again, Mike, if we elevate past the 12-step experience, in any organization and mostly religion where there's dogma, you can find those radical extremists that live by the word and
fundamentalism.
Fundamentalism, bro. And they pick and choose what to step on depending on the situation, and it's always just to move them and their status down the road. It's never about the other person. It's always about them and their beliefs. That's one thing I've noticed, whether we're talking about politics, we're talking about religion, we're talking about, idolatry, all of that stuff. It's always about you. It's never about the community. If that's definitely an observation that I've made. That's why, the book is a guideline. Like it said, it's a treasure map. It's not the treasure itself. And there's no right or wrong. It's different. The treasure is different for everyone.
Mm,
There are some guys, this, there are some guys that are happy being, working as stock guys at 65 years old at ShopRite and living in, a little, studio down the shore and driving an older car. And they're content, man, because of what they lived through. That's their bar. And okay, who am I to tell you that your life needs to elevate? It's up to you. But I'll certainly sit and have a cup of coffee with you and challenge you a little bit
hmm.
if you'd like me to,
Right. I,
and just push you around on the possibilities. Again, coaching.
as we're talking though, dude, so your hair goes with the wind. So, because I know somebody's like, it's a Zoom background. He's in Sayreville. You know what I'm saying? Like just talking shit. And I'm like, nah, bro, he's really in Aruba. So I'm gonna put you
No,
back on
man.
the spotlight. Give me a minute here, just because I want. Oh, yeah, you're living it, dog. You're living it.
Yeah, baby.
I just want you to closing remarks that will. And where is the? Here we go. Let's go right here. Spotlight. Closing remarks, Mr. Mills.
It's always a pleasure spending time with you, Mike. And it's always great talking about, I get excited spending time together. I get excited when we talk about the possibilities of saving lives and changing an industry that saved us. Whether it's the mental health side or the addiction side, both. I think change is change. And I think that we're looking to outside sources, outside methods to create change in the communities that have saved our lives and transformed our lives. Is always it's always good. I'm excited about what we're going to do with Angels Over Addiction over the next couple of months. Uh, I think that some of the programs that you and I have been talking about and starting to nose around about are going to start to coalesce and start to be brought with a little more force and a lot more certainty to the public. And we're going to save some lives, man. And we need people. So if you're watching this, make sure you're on our mailing list. Make sure you're checking in with Mikey D and myself often. Make sure you're looking at cmillscoaches on Instagram. Make sure you're looking at Angels Over Addiction on Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you're staying connected to us and spread the word. When we're doing events, we're doing podcasts, we're doing stuff. Get involved because change isn't that difficult. We can teach you how to do this kind of stuff. And it just makes the whole experience of getting, getting stable and jumping into recovery that much more fulfilling when you realize that you can do what it is that you and I are doing, Mike. Anybody can do what we're doing. They just need a little guidance. So come and hang. And yes, I am in Aruba as my hair.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. All right, bro. I love you so much. Thank you. And that was Charlie Mills, round 3. Next time we got to do it from Mars or something, bro. We're doing it everywhere, bro. All right.
You never know, bro. You never know. Mike, I love you, brother. And
All right, love.
it's great to spend some time with you, man. I'll catch up with you in the next couple of days.
All right, much love. All right, I'm gonna
See
hit
you, brother.
stop on here.